Okay, going through the recap of our mnemonics in this class. So we first talked about how a data analyst's job, really in simplest terms, is to reduce down to refine all of the information that's out there on the internet, all the information that he has access to, the data that he has access to, down to bite-sized little insights that he can support his companies or his business partners, his boss, their decision-making process, and really make it a lot easier for them instead of then going through all of the internet to find out the answers. He can really reduce it down. Talked about our smart friend that was wearing the pattern suit to help us remember about really understanding patterns and trends is important. He also had all that data floating around him to help us remember that he wanted to make data-driven decisions. He was holding that big bag of money as well that he got from identifying all of those opportunities outside of his business. And he was wearing those really big, ridiculous glasses, if you remember, that he used to look kind of introspectively and really optimize the internal operations of his company. Over here, we had our rabbit in a spacesuit, which a very weird thing for sure. And so if we see something that's weird, something we want to understand, we should start with a hypothesis and ask, what is he trying to do? Well, I think he's trying to fly somewhere. I think he's going to the moon, and that would lead us to start looking for the spaceship. So it gives us a direction to start our analysis. We also really want to understand anomalies, but we really want to understand them, not just that they happen, not just that there is a rabbit in a spacesuit, but really ask why that happened. Why could that be? Where did he get a rabbit? Where did he get a spacesuit that fits a rabbit? Why is this happening? Right? Really understand the anomalies on a deeper level so that we can take advantage and better prepare for the anomalies that happen on the downside, but also take advantage of the anomalies that happen on the upside. And we talked about we put a lot of strategies in place, and we wanted to make sure that we're always evaluating the strategies. So does the rabbit wearing a spacesuit move him in the direction of flying to space, or is it just a crazy rabbit in a spacesuit that does not have any spacesuit, right? So is this really moving him towards his final goal? Okay, we want to pay attention to that and evaluate our strategies after we put them in place. We talked about the different random sampling techniques, and just important to think about as we talked about the random sample, the multi-stage, the clustering, how each one of those different types of sampling techniques is going to affect the sample that we get, the diversity between how many blue pandas, how many white pandas, how many black pandas, how many red, orange, and golden colored pandas do we get, right? Are we getting a diverse grouping that matches our population? And each one of those will always be a cost versus benefit. Love to get everyone in our sample, but that's not possible. Especially for it's not possible for the cost that we would incur. We also talked about important to remember that we always have a sample, right? We always have, regardless of how big it would be, remember we're standing outside of our pandas environment at the zoo, and we saw all those pandas falling from the sky, the big mountain of pandas. And that still, though, was still just a small sample of all the pandas out there. So we just need to keep in mind that we are dealing with a sample, and that will have an effect on the robustness of the answers we can extract from our data. We briefly touched on what a data frame is and how information gets transformed into data once it's really given structure, right? Given that data frame, that square format of columns and indexes to allow us to access our data. And just like a data frame gives our information structure, this data right here is giving our panda structure. Okay. We talked about different data types. We have numeric and we have categorical, just like our pandas supporting the numbers, and the black and blue pandas supporting the categorical data types. We briefly touched on relationships in our data. We're going to cover this a lot more later on. But really, we want to remember, getting back to think of that hypothesis, we really want to have a hypothesis that guides our analysis. Which relationships are going to be important for us to understand? You could understand all of them. There's a lot, right? So we need to be focused when we're looking at our relationships, but we want to understand them on a deeper level as well. We want to not just look at the correlation to start. Correlation is great. Correlation is normally where we start. We often want to go a little bit deeper than that and look at things with a simple visual inspection and really see if there are other patterns, if there are other clusters, if there are other things going on that we would want to understand that could be affecting the simple correlation metric. So in this class, we used a lot of Mnemonics. I The pictures were a little bit unique. Hopefully, they were a little bit illogical and a little bit weird, but that was the point. I know this is not your classical university style of class, but the idea is that this information is hopefully going to stay with you a lot longer than it would listening to a professor at a university talk. Okay, right? The goal of this was to help block this information in your head. I used unique, illogical, and I used colors to connect things as well. I also created connections to your past memories. So someone you know, the time you're at the environment of the pandas at the zoo. And I also created a story with some of the pictures as well. Some of the points that we talked, there was a story there. So you can use those points to connect and they connect together. Our memories work by connection. So we want to create as many connections to a memory as possible to help us remember. Not just reading something over and over again. We want to essentially attach it to another memory so that we have a path back to that and we can remember that use location a little bit. We talked about the size of the pandas. Our friend was standing over there. It really our minds work in a better way that helps that works with location. So the more that we can think of 3D spaces, it is a little bit easier for our minds to remember those things. Okay. And your job from here is that would be good for you to go through. As you saw, I didn't read the slides. There's a lot of extra information in these slides, so it'd be great for you to go back and read the slides. The download is at the very top of the class. It would be good if you went through and read all of these things that apply to our class, and you can just review it. Make sure that and as you attach them to the pictures, you'll have the picture, you'll have a little bit more information, and you'll build on that as you continue to practice and build your Python skills. You'll now hopefully have access to all of the things that we learned in this class. And it shouldn't feel like you have access to it. It should just be there. You shouldn't, I think if you pay attention to it, you'll notice that you don't have to fight to get that information out of your brain like you would at a university or a classical high school class that makes you just read through a textbook over and over again. This should just feel easier. It shouldn't feel that it's hard. It shouldn't just be like, oh, this is easy to access. It will just not feel that fighting to get back to that memory that happens with traditional education. Um, so yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in the boot camp number 2.